The Battle of Tours, 732 CE. In the year 732 CE, at a time when the fate of entire civilizations often rested on the outcome of a single clash, a confrontation was about to unfold in the heart of Gaul that would echo through the centuries as one of the most nirshana-sing moments in European history, known today as the Battle of Tours, where two vastly different worlds, cultures, and military traditions would collide in a struggle not only for land or wealth, but for influence, power, and the future direction of a continent. The expanding forces of the Umayyad Caliphate had, within less than a century, achieved what many empires could not accomplish in hundreds of years, rapidly extending their control from the Arabian Peninsula across Persia, North Africa, and into the Iberian Peninsula, where the once powerful Visigothic kingdom had collapsed under the pressure of swift, coordinated, and relentless military campaigns, leaving the region open and vulnerable as a base for further expansion into the European mainland. Under the leadership of the experienced and highly respected general Abdul Rahman Al Ghafiqi, the Umayyad forces were not merely raiding parties, but a disciplined and organized army that combined mobility, tactical awareness, and psychological dominance, using fast-moving cavalry units that could strike deep into enemy territory before resistance could be effectively organized. And as they advanced northward into Gaul, they carried with them not only the momentum of victory, but also the fear that preceded them. As towns and cities fell, wealth was seized, and resistance crumbled in the face of what seemed like an unstoppable force. Among the cities that suffered was Bordeaux, a significant and prosperous center, whose fall sent shockwaves throughout the region, spreading panic among local rulers and populations who began to realize that this was not a temporary incursion, but a serious and potentially transformative invasion. At this critical moment, in the northern regions of Gaul, a leader emerged who would ultimately stand against this tide. A man who was not yet a crowned king, but wielded immense power and influence within the Frankish kingdom, known as Charles Martel, a figure whose reputation for strength, discipline, and strategic patience had already earned him the nickname the Hammer, not because of reckless aggression, but because of his ability to strike with decisive and overwhelming force at precisely the right moment. Unlike many leaders who might have reacted impulsively to the news of the advancing Umayyad army, Martel chose a different path, one defined by careful preparation and calculated restraint. Understanding that a direct confrontation on open ground would likely favor the highly mobile Umayyad cavalry, he instead focused on building a force that could withstand repeated assaults, assembling a disciplined infantry composed of hardened warriors trained to hold formation under extreme pressure, men who would not break even when faced with the terrifying charge of mounted troops. Martel's strategic brilliance was further demonstrated in his selection of the battlefield, choosing a location between the cities of Tours and Poitiers, where the terrain itself would serve as a defensive advantage, characterized by elevated ground, wooded areas, and uneven surfaces that would disrupt the effectiveness of cavalry maneuvers and force the battle into a more controlled and constrained engagement, thereby neutralizing one of the greatest strengths of the Umayyad forces. As the two armies approached and eventually came within sight of each other, a tense standoff ensued, lasting for several days, during which neither side initiated a full-scale attack, each observing the other, measuring strengths and weaknesses, and waiting for the opportune moment to act, creating an atmosphere charged with anticipation and uncertainty, as if the very land itself was holding its breath in expectation of the impending clash.
When the battle finally began, it did so with the thunderous advance of the Umayyad cavalry, whose charge was designed to break enemy lines through sheer speed, impact, and psychological shock, a tactic that had proven devastatingly effective in previous engagements as waves of mounted warriors surged forward, their momentum carrying them into the Frankish formation with tremendous force, creating a scene of chaos and violence as weapons clashed, men fell, and the ground trembled under the weight of the assault. However, in contrast to many previous opponents, the Frankish infantry did not collapse under this pressure. Instead, they maintained a tightly packed formation, standing shield to shield and presenting a solid wall of resistance that absorbed the impact of the cavalry charges, demonstrating a level of discipline and cohesion that proved crucial in withstanding repeated attacks. The battle continued in this manner for an extended period, with the Umayyad forces launching multiple assaults in an attempt to break the Frankish line, each time meeting with determined resistance as the defenders held their ground despite the intensity of the attacks and the mounting casualties on both sides, gradually transforming the battlefield into a grim landscape marked by the fallen and the wounded, where the outcome remained uncertain and the cost of each moment grew increasingly severe. As the engagement dragged on, a critical turning point emerged, not solely through direct combat, but through the spread of confusion within the Umayyad ranks, reportedly triggered by concerns over the security of their camp and the safety of their accumulated wealth and non-combatants, leading to a breakdown in coordination as some units began to withdraw or reposition, disrupting the overall cohesion of the army at a crucial moment. In the midst of this developing disorder, Abdul Rahman Al Ghafiqi attempted to restore control and rally his forces, moving into the thick of the conflict in an effort to stabilize the situation. But in doing so, he became vulnerable and was ultimately killed, an event that had a profound impact on the morale and effectiveness of the Umayyad army, as the loss of a central leader during such a critical phase of battle often leads to further disorganization and uncertainty. With nightfall approaching, the intensity of the fighting diminished and both sides temporarily disengaged, leaving the final outcome unresolved until the following day. However, when morning came, it became apparent that the Umayyad forces had withdrawn from the field, retreating from the confrontation and effectively conceding the battle to the Franks. The aftermath of the Battle of Tours carried significant implications as it marked a halt to the northward expansion of the Umayyad Caliphate into Western Europe, while also solidifying the position and reputation of Charles Martel as a formidable leader whose strategic decisions and disciplined forces had succeeded in resisting a powerful and previously victorious army, an achievement that would later contribute to the rise of the Carolingian dynasty and the shaping of medieval European political structures. Although historians continue to debate the extent to which this battle determined the broader course of European history, there is little doubt that it represented a moment of significant confrontation between expanding and established powers, illustrating how leadership, strategy, terrain, and discipline can influence the outcome of even the most daunting military challenges, and serving as a reminder that in the course of history, decisive moments often arise not from overwhelming strength alone, but from the ability to endure, adapt, and hold firm in the face of extraordinary pressure.